There's a raging debate in the sports card hobby about Gary Vee and if his influence on the hobby is beneficial or if it's damaging to the sports card market. In this video, I'm gonna break down both sides of the argument and offer some perspective as well as some actionable takeaways that we can take as either investors or collectors to ensure that we are getting what we came for in this amazing childlike hobby. Stay tuned to the end where I will go over some of the biggest takeaways I got from Gary Vee's latest Tea with Gary Vee, the sports card special. Welcome back. Now let's get to work. Real quick before I jump in, I'd like to shout out Bill P, Gwain Black, Gagan Gandhi, Ilikepats, and Mark P. Thanks so much for joining this community and engaging with me in the comment section. Now, back to the video. The first complaint I usually hear is that Gary Vee is getting too many investors into sports cards, which is pumping up the prices so high that collectors cannot collect the way they were before. You couldn't complete your sets or your rainbow or get whatever your card you want for a reasonable price because investors like myself and like thousands and thousands of others are being flocked into this industry, this hobby, because we see it as a way to make money and have a side hustle. And so I totally get it. It kind of reminds me of if you go on vacation to a Hawaiian beach and you talk to a local there and the local's all sour because the beach used to be pure and quiet and it was only locals going to the beach and enjoying the sunsets. And then a real estate developer came, built this huge high rise right in front of the beach, and now it's being overrun by all these tourists versus the locals that were there ahead of time. So I see it that way, and I totally get that point and understand it. The second complaint I usually hear is something to do with pump and dump, where Gary Vee mentions certain players or certain cards that will immediately see a rise in sales and in price once the episode of his podcast is released or once the tweet is out. And that's just his influence. Now, people are saying, you know, he's doing a pump and dump, and so is Jeff, and so are all these people. But like, to me, it doesn't make sense just because the risk reward ratio is not there. Now, if Gary Vee wasn't worth $150 million and didn't have all these other things and didn't have a really bright future in so many ways, then it might make sense that he'd want to make a couple $1 million off of his portfolio or 50,000 or whatever it is. But that does not make sense because he has such a powerful brand and company based on his transparency that for him to risk something like that, to pump and dump and risk ruining his reputation would cost him probably hundreds of millions of dollars in the long run for something so small in the short run. And so that's why I don't feel his intent is there at all. And Jeff of Sports Card Investor gets accused of the same thing. But like he mentioned in that last video, which I'm glad he finally said it, is if it's not obvious, he makes his money from the business side of it, not the card side. The card side will make some money, but he can make a lot more money with the Market Movers tool and his community and other opportunities than he could on cards. And that's the reason why I like creating content on YouTube, because I see it as a brand to make a lot more money offering way more value than just what one card could sell for after 6 months or a year. Now, with all that being said, I really believe it is healthy to have a level of skepticism that is in the realm of optimistic and reasonable and not cynical. Be skeptical of me, of Jeff, of Gary, of everyone, because you know, it's always nice to be like, is there agenda? Is there a hidden agenda behind all this? Because then you at least stay sharp. But to go in with, there is an agenda and this isn't right and this isn't right, it's like, all right, you're just a cynic at this point, and I feel bad for you and mostly the people in your life. So now the pros, and the biggest one is that the more attention sports cards get, the more people will join, the more money floods into the industry, and the more opportunities come about. Now, I got into sports cards again because I loved them as a kid and I wanted to reconnect with my childhood, but at the same time, I don't have time for hobbies that are gonna cost me money, but I do have time for hobbies that are gonna put money into my pocket, and that's why I'm going all in on this. Another pro is that I'm closer to my childhood best friend now than we've been for the last 15 years. We were really close up until about 18, 19, 20, and then, you know, college and different colleges, life, all this happened, and now we're talking 8 hours, 10 hours a week on Zoom and on text and all this stuff. So I'm finding a lot of enjoyment, but it also boils down to, I gotta be able to monetize this or I can't put in nearly as much time. Now, I know there's cynics out there that are going, how dare you? How dare you make money in the most sacred and holy of hobbies, sports cards? You know, there is a special level of hell reserved for sports card investors. I bet they're out there saying that. In fact, they're looking up Dante's Inferno just to see if Dante wrote lowest level of hell, sports card investors. I don't think it's there, and even if it was, I don't think that was a real story. But the point is that there's always gonna be cynics, and there's always gonna be people that see opportunity and see the bright side, and I'd rather be one of those that sees the beauty of this opportunity. And the good news is that the opportunities don't end at the card prices. When more money floods the system, there's more interest, there's more people involved, other opportunities open. So I see classes and courses, training, how to become a better podcaster and YouTuber, and events and memberships, all these things sprouting from this. So if you're a collector and you're a bit sour about where this hobby is going, understand this could be a great opportunity for you to showcase your collection, for you to sell at a ridiculously high price and buy some undervalued stuff, for you to be on podcasts and YouTube stations talking about your journey and your favorite cards. You know, this is a time for you to showcase your knowledge and expertise. You can do that. You can create your own brand about just being a collector and hating investors, and that's an opportunity. So honestly, the way I see it is that, like the Greek philosopher said, Heraclitus, I think it was Heraclitus, and the Buddha once said it, change is the only constant. You know, we have always change going on in the world, and instead of fighting it, why not embrace it, look at it with a glass half full perspective, pivot where necessary, and use this opportunity to further our lives and our happiness even more in this wonderful hobby. You know, going back to that analogy about the Hawaiian local, think of it this way, that guy in Hawaii that is complaining about a real estate developer coming in and buying up this beachfront property and putting a condo tower there and all these tourist related activities, he could have gone out and bought an adjacent piece of property and sold it to another developer for a huge profit. He could have opened a restaurant or a surf shop or some business that caters to tourists, and he can make money showing people how beautiful his island is. There's a lot of ways to work with change versus complain about it happening. Now, Gary just finished an hour-long Tea with Gary Vee sports card special edition, and there were a couple things that really stuck out to me that I would like to go over with you. And the first thing is, he answered some guy about the different platforms, and he said he was quite bullish on eBay and thought that eBay was getting better and you could search by grading and all this. And I was a bit surprised by that because he's familiar with CompC and some of the others, and I thought he'd be a bit more predictive of a future platform versus just talking about eBay. And honestly, as an investor and someone that likes short-term investing as well, I hate most of eBay. I think it's horrible. I think it's outdated. It is the juggernaut.
Yeah, it's the juggernaut, bitch!
But I don't see it as the future. However, when he mentioned this, one thing that came to mind was I could easily see eBay buying CompC, buying StarStock, buying StockX, and incorporating the best of both worlds where you can literally buy a card through eBay, but keep it in your inventory on StarStock or StockX or CompC or the others, because that would make a lot of sense and that would cater to everyone. Kind of like Facebook buying Instagram. You combine forces and you could do a lot more good. The second thing that stuck out was when one caller asked if Gary Vee thought the market would cool down. And like I preach, because I'm in the background of personal finance, there's a lot of stimulus checks, there are a lot of credit cards at their limits, and there are a lot of jobs being shifted. A lot have been lost, a lot will continue to be lost, and a lot of shifting going on. And until that madness has simmered down, I don't feel very good about diving into cards that are several hundreds or several thousands of dollars unless they were at that price before the coronavirus and the sports card bubble was huge. So, he said that we're gonna have a new level of normal once all this clears. We had normal before, we have craziness now, and then when all the dust settles, we'll have another level of normal, which should be a lot higher than the prior level. Once it's stable like that, I'll feel a lot better about going into certain cards, but right now it's just buy today, list tomorrow, buy tomorrow, and then list the next day, and it just keeps going up and up, and that's not sustainable. That scares the hell out of me, to be frank. He also mentioned having empathy for all the haters he gets in the sports card world, whether it's because of being accused of pumping and dumping or just getting so many investors in the hobby that it's making it very difficult to afford any card. And it's just nice to hear him say that, because I get it. It would suck as a collector that just wanted to buy certain cards like you always have and you're not able to do it. But you know what? Like I mentioned before, we got to make the best of the situation, whether you think it's a bad situation or a good one. Gary also mentioned how he's been accused of pumping and dumping and how he's going to work to balance that out in terms of how do I be transparent and open and honest without people thinking that you're pumping and dumping. And it's so funny because literally last week I sent out an email to my subscribers saying, I want to find this balance because I love sharing what I'm doing, but at the same time, as anyone's influence grows, that accusation is going to be there, and it's a very tough balance, because how do you share what you're doing and documenting your journey without people saying, hey, but you're just putting this out there so that people will buy this card and then you could sell it. And I don't know the exact answer, but it's cool that he's acknowledging his own influence in that way. Number 5 is that Gary is very hot on Pokemon cards, and I hope those prices are going up, because I have a whole binder of Pokemon cards. A lot of them are foils. Some of them I think are first editions from back in the day that are getting sent to me from my parents' house in Tampa, Florida right now, that I can't wait to show you and do a video on, and of course flip those and roll that over into some sports card investments. But just like you mentioned, comic books, action heroes, Pokemon, they can't tear an ACL, they can't get a DUI, they can't tweet something stupid. So it's a very safe bet right there. I don't know all the nuances of non-sports cards, but I think it's really cool. So if Pokemon or Star Wars or wrestling are your thing, then go for it, because I think that's going to be a wonderful aspect of the card hobby. So if you haven't already done so, go to thecomebackcardinvestor.com, download my 30 advanced investor tips for beginners, and I'll see you in the next video.